Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to the Core Truth Podcast. And today I have Troy Sacco, a dynamic leader and senior vice president of sales and marketing at Five Star Parks and Attractions. With his extensive experience in the industry, Troy has proven himself an expert in motivating and leading teams through compassionate intelligence. Welcome, Troy.
Hey, thanks a lot. Appreciate
It's
it.
really great to have you.
Yeah, it's
Gosh,
great.
and just reading this bio on you, something jumps out at me, and that
What's
is
that?
in motivating and leading teams, but yet you say you can't motivate anybody.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. It's a really great personal anchor I learned a long time ago from my grandfather. It's something that I try to lead in my daily life, and it's a great anchor from a leadership perspective for sure. You cannot motivate anyone. You can only inspire a motivated person. Yep.
So that you got from your grandfather. So
Yeah,
tell us a
absolutely.
little bit about you, Troy. And I know you've always wanted to be a teacher and a coach, and now you're in sales.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that's great. Yeah, so I grew up in Syracuse, New York. Upstate New York, and I grew up with my grandparents, and they were both first generation right off the boat from Sicily. So a little bit different, unique background than most. Really a very different approach to life: hardworking, keep your head down, don't complain, get the job done type stuff. And that's what my grandfather really instilled in me. And I had a ton of coaches in my life that made such a huge impact that very early on I wanted to be a teacher and a coach. I played, every sport possible back then. There wasn't specialization like there is now, right? So I played everything, but I really wanted to play football, and so I was very fortunate. Got to play football in college. Went to college in Kansas, Emporia State University,
wow.
and got my degree in education. And that's really what I wanted to do, was be a teacher and a coach, and be able to pass along all those great life lessons that my coaches passed along. So went down to Texas. That was my first job out of college. I taught middle school in Fort Worth, Texas, and during the summertime, I had a great opportunity to get into sales. It was very unique. And that guy said, "Hey, you want to earn some extra money? You got great personality. You'll talk to anybody. It's a cold calling job, and here's what it is." And so I sold advertising inside the stadiums for the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, NCAA, and made more money in one summer than I did almost my first year teaching. So thought,
Yeah.
well, let me do this for a while, and that kind of started my sales career. And so that path
So
kind of was a good fork in the road, and had a great mentor early on that said, you're so passionate about teaching and coaching. You can do that in sales, but you've got to completely change the trajectory of your path. You have to start to think like a leader and start to really educate yourself on a lot of other things that most salespeople don't take on in their career. And so that's
wow,
kind of how it started.
that's interesting. So I mean, even though
Yeah.
you were passionate about being a coach and a teacher, that hasn't changed. You're just in a
No.
role that pays you more and pays you better. So I think that's a
Yeah,
good idea. That's not
it
a bad
is.
idea, actually.
No, it's not. It's funny. I get to do what I'm really passionate about, which is teaching and coaching. I just happen to do it in something that I was able to be successful at early on. So it's a great blend. I wouldn't change anything. And I have 5 kids and 4 grandkids, so I'm teaching and coaching all sorts of youth sports as it is. So I get the best of both worlds.
That's great. That's really
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
All right, well, let's get into this. I know you like having a strong mission statement. Can you
yeah.
talk a little bit about what that means to you? Because you hear mission statements, you hear vision statements, you hear whys, you hear all these different things.
Sure.
Why are you focused on the mission statement?
Well, I think it's really important that from a leadership perspective, much like a coaching perspective, you have to be anchored in something. And so I believe that my anchor in all my leadership opportunities is anchored in one thing, which is you cannot motivate anyone. You can only inspire a motivated person. And so it's really important, because if everything starts there, what I have found is that I never am too far off of heading north, right? And my compass
Mhm.
is geared towards great leadership styles with that as my anchor. Everyone has their own, and no one is necessarily better than the others. But what I found is that if I stay true to that, and I bring people onto the team and help teach, coach, and mentor people that also are motivated humans, a lot of the ancillary things that get in the way of success um, don't come up, like a lot of
Mhm.
my colleagues have when they don't hold true to what their anchor is, or maybe not, maybe even worse, they don't know what their anchor is. They have a lot of issues that come up. They deal with personalities and a bunch of different visions on how things should get done, and they have key members of their team that want to do something completely different than what they want to do. And when you have a mission statement that you bring people onto the team that share it, that are all motivated people, you tend to not have those distractions. And so success happens quickly, often, and it's repeatable, predictable, measurable, and traceable successes.
It's funny because it reminds me of my favorite, I guess it's a metaphor. I don't know if it's a metaphor, but it's, that term pushing water up a rope.
Oh,
You can
yeah.
spend a lot of time doing that and it doesn't work.
Yeah. Correct.
You made a comment to me that really was kind of crystallizing for me, I guess I would say. And that is that if somebody, isn't motivated, your other goal is to help them get out of what they're doing and go find something that they can be. In other words, go be successful somewhere else. Go be motivated where you're motivated. Because I can't motivate you. You know what I mean? I can inspire a motivated person that wants to do this, but and it's so funny, Troy, because I was thinking, I've spent my whole life trying to motivate people, and it usually doesn't work. I still think there's value in it. It keeps them going. I don't think it's completely, but it's a little bit of a waste of time. But where I've had success is where I found maybe that I've moved them in a slightly different direction, and it clicked.
Yeah, 100% accurate. I think it's not that they're bad people. It's not that they're not skilled. It's not that they don't have high aptitude. It's just they're not motivated to get up and do the things that you need them to do in order for you to be successful. I'll give you a great example. My son, I have a 15-year-old son, probably a better athlete than I ever was at 15 years old. I was everything I could do to introduce him to every sport possible: football, baseball, basketball, the whole thing. But he did not want to get up to go to practice. He did not want to go out and catch 100 balls a day before any of those things. But unbelievable athlete. And then he got into wrestling, and I can't keep him off the mat. He wakes up early. He's there every day. He lifts weights. And it's because he wasn't an unmotivated human. It was just he wasn't in an environment where that motivation was inspiring to him. And now with wrestling, it is, and that's a great example that I tell everybody in my team about. I pulled my hair out, as you can see, trying to get my son to play every sport possible. But it was wrestling that really tapped into that motivation.
So as a parent, I know you apply a lot of your skills and a lot of your learning and education towards your family and your kids.
Sure.
What would your advice be to parents in terms of helping I guess a lot of parents will try to force kids to go in a certain direction.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And what would your advice be around that? I mean, how do you let kids find out what they're passionate about so that they can be motivated and be super successful? What is your thought on that?
I would, there's a rule in advertising called the money listens. And so, people will throw money at things that are successful, right? Well, in parenting, what I found, especially in sports, is that practice listens. And so I always say, practice is not like Las Vegas. What stays at practice does not stay at practice. Right. So if you see, you're not taking practice seriously and you're not motivated to get up and go to practice, that's the key for me. That's what clicked for me. And I would encourage every parent to watch how they practice, not how they play, because practice listens. And when you find out when they wake up every day and they're at the door with their cleats and their helmet ready to go to practice, that's something they're motivated to do. And I wouldn't push them to the practice component is the big trigger for me.
All right. So we have tons of leaders listening to this podcast, and you have like 4 types of leaders. I mean, there's 4. You've broken leaders into 4 categories. What are those 4 categories?
Yeah, for sure. So it's really simple, actually. So in my experience, there's 4 different types of leaders. The first type of leader is a mechanic. And a mechanic leader is somebody who is probably at some point very, very good at the process and procedure of what they were doing before they become a leader. And somebody saw that in them and made them a leader. But from a mechanic's point of view, they try to fix everything for other people, right? They're always trying to hide the faults of the people that work for them on their team. And that's a really hard thing as a mechanic to let go of, right? They won't punish or push. They're very overly sympathetic. They won't let their teams fail, but they also won't let them try. And they really confuse information is power with respect. And so as a mechanic, they're constantly doing things for their team and not letting them do things for themselves. And that's really the first and probably least experienced type of leader. And the second type of leader is the sheriff. And I liken the sheriff to somebody who leads through intimidation, right? The letter of the law, not the intent of the law. Only the results count. There's somebody who comes in, and if their team or their people aren't getting the results, that's what they manage to. Behavior doesn't matter, right? And so they tend to punish instead of push. So when something goes wrong, there's a punishment associated versus pushing them to do things differently or do things better. And most of the time, sheriffs, they really confuse fear with respect. So when they walk in the room and people are at attention and they really are paying attention to what they're saying, it's not because they necessarily respect them. They're actually scared or fearful of the response. And so, the worst thing, Peter, about the sheriff leader, though, is that they're often correct. From a black and white perspective, what they're saying or what they're trying to get across is actually accurate, but people don't see it that way because of the approach and how they're going about it.
Right.
Yeah, and then the third type, which is often the hardest to read, in my perspective, as I'm growing leaders in my organization, the hardest one to read because they're very good at this is the mayor. And the mayor, what they really do is they read the room. They kind of adjust their approach, so they're constantly trying to get reelected. Right? They get reelected at all costs. They want everyone to like them. They have lots of promises, not a lot of follow through. They manage relationships first before results, and they try to be a friend to everybody. And with them, they're very inconsistent with their approach and reaction. And what they do is they often confuse being liked and loved with respect. So because people like them, they think that they respect them. And so it's really hard for a mayor to hold people accountable, because if they hold them accountable, they're afraid that they won't be liked or won't vote for them. And that's a hard place to be, because that's not ultimate leadership, right? And then the final one, which is kind of what I ultimately try to strive to be every day, is the governor. And the governor, they have a really balanced and effective approach to leadership because they use compassionate intelligence. And a governor can be any one of the other types of leader at any given time, but they come into it with a blank slate. They can be the sheriff if they need to be. They can be the mayor, and be somebody that can relate to the team if they need to be. But they also are skilled enough and have the respect of the team, because they would never ask anybody to do anything that they could not do. And they can be a mechanic at times too. They can actually do the job or be able to step in. And they're really consistent with their approach. They're often viewed as a mentor, and they're very, very accountable to their words. And so those are really the four different types of leaders. Wow. And my goal, as I'm bringing leaders up through the organization, has always been to identify as quickly as possible which direction these potential leaders are going, and then make the determination if they have the ability to be a governor, or are they always going to be one of the other three.
It's really interesting because, in my world, we have branch managers.
Yeah.
And branch managers definitely fall into these categories.
Sure.
And the mechanic is the manager that loves deal doctoring, helping agents fix their deals, calling their clients with them, doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
Great service. Agents love it, but it's not sticky. It won't hold an agent to the office.
Correct. Yep.
The sheriff, on the other hand, they kind of blow people out really quickly because they don't know, they have no sensitivity. They're very, like you say, black and white.
Yep.
And they don't read the room, and oftentimes will throw out the baby in the bathwater.
Yep. And they're not, and oftentimes they're correct, right? You hear them out and they're like,
more than not. Yeah, they're
right.
They're right, but they don't know how to present it,
Correct.
And so that's their problem. And the mayor, they can kind of be sticky for a while, but eventually, like you say, they don't stand for anything, and they will not have the stickiness. But if you're a governor, from what you're saying, you've got a little bit of mayor in you, a little bit of sheriff in you, and a little bit of mechanic, and you know when to pull out those different types of behaviors when necessary. That's what I'm hearing, and I love that.
Yeah, 100%. I think people are smarter than you give them credit for, and they see right through a lot of that stuff. And when you come down on somebody for not doing things correctly, but you are trying to help them improve and get better, you can be the sheriff, but they see the governor in you, and the respect factor is always there, right? And
Got it.
yeah, there's a lot to that for sure. But I think finding out who you are as a leader is really important. And if you're the owner of the business or somebody in your position where you manage a bunch of other leaders, finding out where each of them fit is really important, because as you have talent come onto your team, if you have a really high functioning, high aptitude, high potential individual and you stick them with a sheriff, that relationship will blow up very quickly. If you stick them with a mayor, they won't have respect for them, and you'll be able to see that right away, that there's a lack of seriousness in it with how they view their leader. And if they have a mechanic, they're going to get frustrated because they're not learning anything, and they want to be able to do so. It's really important to understand not only who your leaders are, but who you're putting on the team in terms of teammates.
Now, if you have one of these categories that's not, if you have a mechanic, a sheriff, or a mayor that's not a governor yet, will you try to coach them up to governor?
For sure, yeah. If they're motivated to learn, yeah. If they're a motivated person that wants to continue to grow their career, that's where the inspiration survey comes in. That we can talk about in a little bit. But if when we bring people on the team, we give them an inspiration survey, and we'll talk about that in a second. But if the desire to be mentored is very low on their inspiration survey, that is a big red flag for growth. It doesn't mean they can't do a job or can't be part of the team. It's just they're not motivated to be mentored by somebody. And so wasting my time trying to mentor
They're not
somebody
open-minded, are they?
Yeah,
They're really set. There's just like one way to them.
Yep,
and I can see that in the mechanic, I can see it in the sheriff, and I can see it in the mayor.
Yep.
The mayors tend to run scared.
Yep.
Sheriffs, not at all.
Yeah.
And the mechanic's so busy working, they don't even know what's going on.
Oh, no, 100%. And here's the thing, throughout my career, I've seen people in each of those roles that are motivated to be mentored. And the difference is they have the ability, they've just have never been shown what the other types of leadership styles are, right? And so, you could take a sheriff who's really, a hammer fist approach to things and be able to show them how to soften that. And if they're motivated to learn and be mentored and be coached, they can start to develop that governor approach. But if they're not motivated to do that, then it is a waste of time in my experience. I haven't been doing it 40 years, but 2.5 decades is enough time to be able to have a good case study on it for sure.
I would say so. Very good.
Yeah.
So then there's you have 4 types of leaders, and then you have 4 types of teammates.
Yeah, correct. The teammates are the kind of the other shoe that drops, right? Because once you find out the types of leaders that you have, what you're trying to do is match up the type of teammate that you have on the team to the particular leader. And this is interesting, Peter, because if you are building a team of people from scratch, you have a much less likely issue on your hands, because you can pick people that share your motivation, right? They're motivated humans, and you can start from scratch building the team. The hard part is when you come in as a leader and you have an existing team, you need to spend an unbelievable amount of energy trying to figure out which one of the 4 teammates you have with every single person. It's one of the most mission critical things you can do. And so the first type of teammate is the advocate. The advocate these are people that are for you. They follow you because they believe in who you are, what you stand for. They believe in your culture, your path, most importantly, your process. They will advocate for you when you're not there to advocate for yourself, right? But the other part of being an advocate is that they will call you out privately. They will call and ask for your help and advice. They're going to call it like they see it. They're very high accountable people. But advocates are for you, and they believe in who you are. The next type is a little bit harder to discern, and that is the ally. Because the ally, they are not for you, they are for what you are for. And and they'll follow you because not because they believe in you, but they'll follow you because of the things that you believe in, right? They're on your team if it benefits them directly. They'll be fans as long as what you're doing benefits them. They may ask you for advice and for help, but they will keep quiet if they don't agree, right? And the bad thing with the allies, they will abandon ship pretty quickly if you start to do things that they don't agree with. Because an advocate, if you do things they may not agree with, they'll stay because they believe in you, and they'll follow the process through because they believe in who you are. They may not understand it, they may not fully agree, but they believe in you. Where the ally, because they don't believe in you, they will bail. And so those are two, really interesting types of individuals that are hard to distinguish between. But if you can find advocates, you want it. The next one is what I call the advocate. The advocate is not for you.
Well, you just did the advocate.
Oh no, the ally. The ally was the
you
second
did the ally is for the idea. The advocate's for you.
Or the associate. Sorry, the associate. Yeah, I apologize.
The associate. There you go.
Yeah, the associate. The associate is they're not for you. And they're not for what you are for. They're actually against what you are against. And these are folks that usually don't stay very long. If they see that you're a cultural leader and somebody that is going to impose the culture of positivity and really want people on the team that follow your culture, they won't stick around very long. They'll stand next to you as long as you're fighting the common cause that you both don't like, right? And they'll tell you that they agree with you privately, but they won't tell people publicly that they agree with you. They're going to complain without providing solutions, but they're not for you. They're not for what you are for. They are against what you are against. And so I'm sure everybody on this call has had people that sit around the water cooler and you can complain about the same thing. But when you start to talk about the things that you believe in that they don't agree with, they bail on you pretty quick. The only thing you'd have in common are the complaints, right?
Right.
And then the fourth one is the adversary. And these, Peter, these are people that are not for you. They're not for what you are for, and they're not against what you're against. They're actually against you. These are people that'll leave really quickly. They won't stay long, if anything. And
how do they get there? How do they get there in the first place?
Well, this is if you're coming onto the team and you don't have control of whether or not they're on the squad, right? So this is why, if you
they just don't like me, basically. They just don't like
me. That's exactly right. Yeah,
I got it. Yep.
They'll undermine you whenever possible. The big thing that you'll notice is that they'll never clap when you win, even if it means they win. In their head, clapping for you means that they somehow support you. And so it's very easy to spot these people when the company wins, when you guys have big team wins, when somebody is having success, and they're the people that constantly are looking for ways to undermine.
That actually makes them mad to see you be successful.
100%. Yeah, no, 100%. They have really low accountability. And so those four types of teammates, when you match them up against the types of leaders, what you often will find is a mixture of either really easy, fast, sustainable success, or a train wreck waiting to happen because you don't have the mixture of leadership and the proper teammates. And so that's why
is the associate pretty close to the adversary, because you guys are like teaming up on stuff you don't like, so as soon as that goes away, they're against you, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
pretty much.
I think, yep.
Because I'm trying to think, I'm going through my own head, like different people that would fall into these categories, right?
Yeah.
The advocate, I can picture that person immediately. The associate, the ally, we're behind a certain idea. If that idea changes, they're gone. I've seen it, like you come out with a certain, the associate, that's the hardest one for me. You know what I mean? Probably of that group. And the adversary, it's obvious. They're the one that every time you say something, they roll their eyes. You know that person immediately.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, the associate's a little tough because, if you're standing in a room with them and you're not self-aware and you don't understand the difference between the ally and the associate, you won't recognize that the only difference between a conversation with the ally that is is agreeing with you and the conversation with the associate that's agreeing with you is the only difference is the subject. And the subject with the associate is a complaint. It's something that you don't like. It's something that you want to change. The associate will agree with that just like the ally. But when you start to talk about a positive thing or something that you would like to do to make things better, or it's a positive thing in the organization, the associate will not necessarily agree with that because they're not for you and they're not for what you are for. They're only there to hop on the bandwagon when it's something that matches up against what they're against.
Got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know a big part of your plan and running teams and building great teams is knowing how to communicate with your people.
Sure. Yeah.
And within that communication, you have 5 rules on that as well, like how to communicate. Can you
Yeah.
go through those with us?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. This is, I learned this through about as much trial and error as you can possibly imagine. But it's absolutely true. I do it every day. I did it this morning when I sent out a couple emails. These are the 5 rules of communication that I use. And before I send any email or I get on a call and I walk through what we're trying to get accomplished as a team, I always stop and ask myself, have I answered these 5 questions for that person before I hit send or before I have the conversation? Because if one of these 5 things is not answered and they don't do it or they don't accomplish what we're trying to get done, then it's really my fault, not theirs. And so here are the 5 rules of communication. What do you want me to do? How do you want me to do it? Why is it important? How am I doing? And what's in it for me? And so those are important for different reasons. The what do you want me to do is a really simple one, right? That's, hey, look, tell me what you want me to do. That's easy. How do you want me to do it?
Well, when you say 5 rules of communication, is this 5 rules of communication to get something done?
Yes, correct. Yep.
All right. So this is when you're talking to somebody and you want to get something done.
Correct.
This is how you talk to them. Okay. So
Yeah,
take us through.
correct.
So
Yeah,
what
it's
do you
all-
want me to do is the first thing, because that's what the person's thinking, right? That's the person you're trying to get to do something is asking you the question, what do you want me to do? Or at least in their brain.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And all of these are kind of in the back end when I highly encourage people to answer these questions before they even have the conversation. That's kind of the key, right? But yeah, what do you want me to do? So just, you map it out as quickly as possible. It's like, hey, these are the things I need you to accomplish. The how do you want me to do it is a missed opportunity a lot, because you have something in your head, whether it's how you want the Excel spreadsheet formatted, or how do you want the presentation to look, or how do you want the information to be organized, or whatever those things are. How do you want me to do it is important, and it's a missing step. I always send an example, or I will walk somebody through exactly how I want that to be done, because well, I didn't know that's how you wanted me to do it, right? So that's an excuse. You're trying to remove those excuses in your approach. The why is it important is an obvious one. Sometimes people will say, well, okay, well, I didn't know that's why you wanted me to do that. Right. And it's very important to have them understand, the why behind the how, as you've heard a million times, right? It's why am I doing this? And you're tying that thread from the beginning to the end. Mm-hmm. How am I doing is the most often missed, Peter, because what happens is somebody will tell you, hey, look, I want you to do this. Here's how I want you to do it. Here's why I'm asking you to do it. And then they show up at the end when it's due, versus doing what I call a check back, or something to verify that the process is going well. This is where the discipline component comes in as a leader. So as an example, I just told my team about doing game plan reviews, and they would be due, April 25th or whatever it is. I set a reminder in my calendar on the 20th to check back in with everyone and say, hey, just as a reminder, here is when the due date is. Please get a hold of me. Let me know if you have any questions. I've gone in and looked at some of them. Here's some common errors that are happening, et cetera. So that, somebody will say a lot of times, well, if you would have told me that I was doing it wrong, I wouldn't have spent 2 days doing it this way, right? And so that's a really hard one, because it takes a lot of discipline.
It's
Yeah.
smart. It's feedback, right?
Yep. And then the final
What's
one
in
is
it for
what,
me?
yeah,
Right?
this is the, the, the one that is very self-serving, but it's needed. How is this going to benefit the individual? And it doesn't have to be monetary or rewards or recognition. It's just, how is it going to make what they do easier, better, more powerful, more efficient, more repeatable, predictable for them,
Mm-hmm.
etc. And so, if you can answer all five of those questions for somebody before you give them the assignment or what you want them to do, and they don't do it, then that's on them. But if you're missing one of those things, you really have to, self-check as a leader and say, you know what? As silly as it sounds, I didn't tell them why it was important, so they weren't vested. They didn't have
That's right.
that. They didn't understand why it was so important. And so, as bad as it sounds, and I know it sounds silly, but that really was my job, is to help them
Mm-hmm.
understand all five of these things. So what I found is,
Mm-hmm.
if I answer them, I get a much higher success rate on my goals, objectives, what I'm asking the team to do,
Mm-hmm.
versus just, hey, everybody's game plan's due on the 25th, and that's it.
I love this. I'm going to use it. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
yeah. So, how how do you hire people? And do you have a system for hiring successfully?
Yeah. I mean, the trial and error component behind this is well documented for sure. But I have what I call an inspiration survey, Peter. So I go in, and what I do is, before I hire anybody, actually sometimes before I even interview, what I do is I go in, and I have them take a inspiration survey. And what the inspiration survey is, it's really one question that is ranking how they are inspired every day when they come to work. And in the world that I live in, I hire salespeople, right? So for me, they have to rank one of and two of these inspirations very high. Otherwise, in my experience, they don't tend to be very good at sales when outbound prospecting is required. So I send them the survey. They rank these 7 things from 1 to 7, 1 being the most inspirational every day when they come into work, and 7 being the least inspirational. So here they are. It's in no order, but just I have them rank: paid well, being appreciated, being listened to, being promoted, being involved in decisions, being mentored, or being challenged to compete. And what I have found, I've probably interviewed, maybe, I don't know, close to 1,000 salespeople, and I've hired, 3, 4, 500 of them over my career. And I can tell you that the correlation is, it's almost overwhelming, that when a salesperson ranks challenged to compete, mentored, and involved in decisions, or promoted, very high, they tend to be very, very, very good outbound sales and prospecting salespeople. And so,
So it's paid well, appreciated,
yep,
listened to, promoted, um,
involved in decisions.
involved in decisions, right?
Yep,
Mentored, challenged to compete. And what
yep.
have been the most effective, in your opinion?
Um, well, if it's just salespeople, the mentor component is not ranked very high. But if you're
Okay.
looking to hire, future sales leaders, usually what you're looking for is challenge to compete, being mentored, and being involved in decisions. Those are great leadership sales rankings in
Mm-hmm.
terms of inspiration.
Okay.
If if you are not interested in leadership from a sales perspective, you just want to come in and produce,
Mm-hmm.
then being challenged to compete, and being paid well, and being promoted, may be up there on the
Higher.
list. And
Got it.
it's these are things that are pretty time tested, and I'm able to make decisions based on those things. If somebody comes in and they rank, I want to be appreciated and listened to and paid well as 1, 2, and 3, but they rank being challenged to compete and mentored 6 and 7, what they're essentially saying is, hey, I want you to pay me. I want you to pay attention to me, and I want you to tell me I'm doing a good job, but don't challenge me, and I don't want to hear anything that you have to give me from advice.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah,
I want you.
yeah, exactly, right. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it is interesting, but it's very effective from a hiring perspective. That's for
God,
sure.
this has been
Yeah.
amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
I love these filters. They're actually filters you can use to run an organization.
Oh, 100%. And I know you work with Holly, and I tell the story when I went to American Golf. We were doing about $26 million in revenue across the organization in private events and tournaments. And when I left 5 years later, we were doing close to $50 million in private events and tournaments. And the interesting thing about that is not gratuitous to me or the process, but we had a 67% turnover rate my first 2 years that I was there. And we didn't fire a single person. They self-selected out. And the reason for that is that we brought in a culture of competition and competing and outbound prospecting, et cetera. And every time one of those inbound minded people who want to be paid well, appreciated, listened to, but not challenged, every time that they quit, we just would go out and hire competitive humans who were already motivated, most of them former athletes or former competitive people in other fields, and they would destroy previous numbers because they were more interested in being challenged and involved in decisions and mentored than they were being paid well and patted on the back.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, Troy, I know we're running out of time, but I did want to hear a little bit about why sales is not selling.
Yeah, sure. I think I really believe this, to my core, is that sales is not selling anything to anybody. Sales is really providing a solution to another person's problem. And if you can be disciplined in the sales approach to approach it from finding out how to help people, the sales component takes care of itself. And so I hate to use the word sales sometimes because really what you are is you're a partner in their process, right? You're a partner in their success. And so I don't really believe, well, at least in the last 15 years for sure, I've really sold anything. It's about really providing a solution, and teaching and coaching and mentoring salespeople to think that way is really part of the success factors I think that I've been able to have, especially here at 5 Stars. We're continuing to grow. So
That's fantastic.
yeah.
So Troy, if somebody had questions or wanted to reach out to you, how would they do that?
Oh, yeah. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm very easy to find on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way. To shoot me a direct message on LinkedIn. Got no problem with that whatsoever, and easily can reach me. Also, I'll give you my cell phone number. It doesn't matter at all. 469-664-2512. Just shoot me a text, shoot me a phone call, and I'll help any way I can. The teacher, coach, and mentor in me will trigger, and here we go. Right, any way I can help.
I love it. I love it. Well, Troy, I've never heard these filters before, and whether I'm looking at leaders or team members or I was just thinking, create more activity within the organization through the questions you ask, down to how to hire through the inspiration survey. I mean, everything you said is so right on and so easy. What a great way to run a business. So thank you so much for joining us on The Core Truth.
Hey, well, I appreciate it very much. Great opportunity to talk to you, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you too. Well, that wraps it.